So now you will be live to people online. So don't say anything horrible and evil. Say how much you love the Schaumburg Library and stuff like that.
Can you mic check me real quick? I don't know if this is okay.
We pre-checked them before we gave them to you guys, so we know they work.
Well, I just don't know if my angle's right, if it's going to move around with this thing.
Fine,
Okay.
actually. Believe me, I've had people put them all over the place. That's this part.
It'll come on when you guys are together, right? And I'll move it after I'm done.
Oh, it's so weird to see from Becky. Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome into the Civic Awareness Series here at the Schaumburg Library. Today, we'll be talking about sustainability. Very exciting topic, specifically because it's going to be about sustainability efforts in some of your local communities. And if you're not from either of the communities that are represented here on our panel tonight, maybe you can take some of their ideas to your municipality and figure out how your community can get a little bit more sustainable. I'm Chris Corrigan. I'm your Adult Programs Coordinator here at the library. And I'm so excited to be continuing our partnership with the League of Women Voters of the, you gotta remember all the areas, the Palatine, Barrington, and Schaumburg areas? Yes. Got them, yes. If anyone at home has any questions for our panelists, you can submit those through the Q&A feature. We have a moderator from the League of Women Voters who will be actively monitoring that Q&A and be able to ask those questions as they come in. If you are having any technical difficulties, you can also use the Q&A. I'll be monitoring it from a different computer, and that way I can help you as best I can with any issues you may be experiencing. You'll also notice that closed captions have been enabled for your convenience. For our in-person audience, if I can take a moment to ask you to silence your cell phones and any other electronic device that may make noise during the program, as lights and sounds emitted by those devices are distracting to your fellow patrons as well as to the panelists. If you need a restroom, the restrooms are located right out this door here. The ladies is the first one, the gentleman's is a little further down, and there's a water fountain between the two. If you have a question in-person audience, you were given a little note card. You can raise that, and I believe Terry from the League will be collecting those and get those up to Janet as they come in as well. I don't want to take up any more of our time than I already have, so I'm actually going to pass things over to Terry Gazowski from the League of Women Voters, and she will introduce our speakers tonight.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Hello, and in case you didn't hear, today is Earth Day. Earth Day is an annual event on April 22nd to demonstrate support for environmental protection. It was first held April 22nd, 1970, and has grown in its importance every day since to remember. My name is Terry Gazowski, Events Co-Director with Janet Sonoyka, Co-Director of League of Women Voters, Chapter Palatine, Barrington, and Schaumburg areas. And today, as Chris said, Janet will be moderating our panel with Q&A. So first, thank you again for all your interest in civic awareness. Thank you, Schaumburg Library and Chris Corrigan, in partnering first with the League on the Civic Awareness Series. For newcomers to the series, a bit about the League. It's a nonpartisan political organization. Anyone can join or support the League in our mission of promoting civic engagement, voter education, and advocacy and awareness on various current topics like today. We are over 100 years old, but welcome the energy of all ages and genders. You can learn more about the League and participation through the website and the chat. So in keeping with Earth Day, today's sessions hosts a panel of sustainability coordinators speaking on the plans in place in their communities. This is a wonderful opportunity to ask questions and be educated on what your town is doing to help the planet. This will go fast. This is the important part. Our panelists include Monica Richart, Sustainability Planner for the Village of Schaumburg, and Glen, Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director for the City of Rolling Meadows. They will take us through what their communities have in their future plans. A little bit about Glen. He is the Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director for Rolling Meadows, where he oversees building, planning, zoning, and economic development. He has over a decade of municipal experience, including 6 years in Lake Bluff and earlier roles in the suburbs of Kansas City. Glen has been involved in local sustainability efforts throughout his career, including helping to develop the first sustainability plans for Rolling Meadows and Lake Bluff. He currently serves on the steering committees for the federally funded Comprehensive Climate Action Plan for Greater Chicago. He holds a Master of Public Administration from the University of Kansas and graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of Missouri. Monica Richart is the Sustainability Planner for Schaumburg, which is where we are at today, Schaumburg Library. And she was previously worked as an urban designer and resilience planner in the architecture and engineering sector and taught at UIC and DePaul universities. Monica has developed sustainable plans for municipalities across the country, including Oak Park's recent plan of climate-ready Oak Park. Monica holds a Master's of Landscaping Architecture from the University of Texas, Austin, and a Bachelor of Geography from DePaul University. So before we get started, I just wanted to mention next month's awareness session of artificial intelligence and its connections with politics. That will be Tuesday, May 27th, 7 to 8 p.m., right here in this same room, and remote as well. This session will cover the topic of artificial intelligence and its connections with politics. So thank you for joining us today and spending time to learn a little bit more about sustainability in your community. And let's get started. Off to you, Janet.
Thanks. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. I will be juggling a few tablets today, so if you see me checking for audience questions, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just making sure we all get in on the conversation.
I was very flattered that we, apparently we need to be shielded from distractions. I came here distracted, so the tablets
Yes,
help that along.
I've got all the distractions here. Lovely, but yeah, thank you again, Monica and Glenn, for joining us. Really appreciate it. I do want to kick off with kind of a big picture question in what does sustainability look like in each of your communities? So in Schaumburg and Rolling Meadows, real big picture, we'll get into the nitty gritty. What is sustainability for your community? Monica, if you want to start us off.
Sure. So I think in Schaumburg, a lot of our sustainability practices are very integrated into everything that we do, into all of our different departments. So all of the responsibilities that each of our departments has, like public works or transportation, a fundamental part of that is incorporating best practices for sustainability. I think some of the standout parts of our regulations, we have a biodiversity recovery plan, which draws on kind of like an analysis of all of the ecosystems and green spaces in Schaumburg, and has created like an overlay district with specific design regulations for work and development that gets done in these areas. We also have a wetland and stream protection overlay district, which has a similar function, and these help to direct things like native plantings around detention ponds or streams, stream restoration projects, and things like that. We have a very comprehensive but streamlined renewable energy ordinance as part of our code, and we also have a comprehensive green action plan, which was developed in 2009, and that serves as sort of a policy framework, serves to guide direction at the village. And one thing that I'm really excited about is that we're actually updating that plan this year. So we're currently working on a new updated comprehensive green action plan that's going to take into consideration all the changes that have happened over the last 15 years, the current needs and desires of our community. And we are really excited about getting input from the community. We are reaching out, and this is a great time to, if you have ideas about sustainability, to connect with us and share those ideas. We also have a very large farmers market, which is one of my roles. I coordinate it, and we have a community apiary for beekeeping, which is kind of a unique, I think, amenity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for that overview. I know you guys touch a lot of stuff, so thank you for summarizing it. Sure. Glenn, you want to give us a brief overview of the Rolling Meadows sustainability?
Sure. I think you just heard the whole breadth of, the many different activities, topics this entails. I'd like to look a bit more chronologically, and I'll say here too with a bit of an asterisk. I came to this city at the start of 2023. A lot of this work was going on ahead of time, so I don't know if my understanding of the history is perfect. In many ways, I would say the interest in sustainability, really the interest in environmentalism as a subset of that, in Rolling Meadows kind of crystallized around an event in the 2000s. We had a local student, Emily Jackson, died as a result of the opioid crisis, really the start of that at the time. Her father and some community members made this prairie along Salt Creek in her memory. I believe now that 60 Minutes actually just profiled the story here in the last few weeks, months, early this year. So it's very interesting as we're talking. That event continues to affect our communities and is still being handled in the courts, right? So very unrelated to sustainability in a sense, but I think working on that prairie, which is really like a memory project, is what started to get kind of a self-organized environmental committee. Really, again, parts of it were around in gardening and landscaping and crystallized around doing this work. They started to get school children involved. And that continued to grow and develop. A few years ago, the city formalized its environmental committee as a body of the city. And when I came in, I was the first kind of full-time dedicated planner employed by the city in a while. We have more now, but one of my tasks I was given was to help that group kind of finish a midstream, really homegrown sustainability plan. At the end of 2023, we adopted that plan. It has roughly, there's some duplication, but more or less 45 short-term action goals for the city to take across many different domains. It's modeled after the Greenest Region 2 Compact, or Greenest Region Compact 2, GRC 2, which is a regional project here in Chicagoland, the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And again, it is trying to work holistically, as you heard in Schaumburg, across the many different domains that local government affects.
Yeah, I think that actually leads me to my first follow-up question already. It sounds like you guys both mentioned sustainability plans, and right now you guys are working on one and taking an input, or it was more of a grassroots effort over in Rolling Meadows. Where do these plans really originate, and then how do they become adopted by the city? What does that look like for your respective communities then? If you want to get started. So essentially, like this plan, how did that go from a non-formal environmental group to being adopted by the city?
Sure. I would say, and I think your consulting experience is going to be fascinating here too. I live in a bit of a silo. There's really two ways these things came about in a lot of the experience I've seen. The first is that even before the last wave of legislation back in the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, there was money for sustainability coordinators, for sustainability planning. In the wake of the Great Recession, there was a lot of support to bring in professional staff to do those plans. And so there is a whole tranche, if you would, of those plans that came around from that time and that support. If you weren't in that group, it seems like most of the time, you have a group of citizens that organize and advocate, and they might draft it, or they might write it, or they might just keep asking for it. And eventually that coalesces into a product that gains really formal political support.
Gotcha. And then Schaumburg, similarly, you said you're recruiting, input from folks. So then who is in Schaumburg submitting the plan to the city body to formalize that? Right.
So yeah, we'll get feedback from the community, and we will put it together. We're putting it together in-house, so we're doing it, within our department, and then it gets presented to the village board for final approval.
Gotcha. So then, as sustainability coordinator, are you the one who's presenting it then? Yes. Okay. Excellent.
To that narrow question, same thing wrong.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So then the environmental committee or whoever will work with you to get that. I guess then in that instance, right? So the community or the environmental committee will present their ideas, and then at that stage, when you receive it, is what, as sustainability coordinator, is your responsibility to either fine tune it or to understand like, oh, this is a nice community want, but it's not something that is practical in a sustainability plan? Is there any type of that work that your expertise comes into play before submitting it to council or whoever?
Oh, sure, absolutely. We have an environmental committee in Schaumburg as well. So we really work along, I mean, I work alongside the environmental committee, and you know, they help me develop the survey, which is online right now. They're going to be advising along the way and helping to brainstorm and come up with ideas, and then we kind of craft it into something that's practical and works within the systems that we have. Gotcha. and can be implemented.
Gotcha. Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, keep asking questions like this, and you too can take a graduate level course in the art of urban planning.
That's the goal.
You know, I mean, just extending on that answer, you know, it's, we are, much like the league is nonpartisan, we are nonpartisan policy experts. In some cases we're translating, we're code switching, we're trying to, you know, help folks get from abstract concepts into actions. We're trying to help folks understand how best or most effectively, or even, you know, most feasibly, technologically, politically, whatever, to operationalize these. You know, we're not trying to impose anything, but we're trying to work collaboratively with people to help them express that. And that can be, in some cases, it's informal. As of course, in our world, it's kind of formal, working up from advisory bodies ultimately to policy documents that are approved by our city council.
Gotcha. No, that's great. So it sounds really like for gauging public interest, you usually, it seems like cities have some group of folks who are already kind of, who want to be involved in sustainability efforts. How do you reach a broader audience, like more of the general community and not just the folks who are already heavily invested in sustainability efforts? So you said, you mentioned you have a survey, like what are the tools that you use to gauge public interest?
We have a survey. If anyone wants to go, it's on our website. We have an engagement platform for Schaumburg, so it's just villageofschaumburg.com/engage. If you go to that website, you can take the survey. There's also a open-ended question in there, so if you have any ideas or inputs that weren't covered by the survey, you can always put those in there. We're also doing an open house type of event, which is going to be here at the library again in a month on June 1st. And this is going to be along with the Summer Reading Challenge kickoff event that the library does, and also the environmental fair is happening at the same time. We're going to have a booth there where you can get more information, where you can give comments, and I'm going to be presenting on the new plan update as well. So, you know, by that point, we'll have hopefully a little bit more to share about the progress.
And how long is the survey open? When's the deadline before that survey closes?
June 15th.
June 15th, okay, great. Yeah. That gives some time. Nice. And Rolling Meadows, what does that look like how do you gauge public interest in Rolling Meadows?
Sure. Again, planners, we sort of have a broad toolbox, surveys, open houses, a lot of things in between, from the informal to the formal, potentially like a legal public hearing process, right? What I would say, without being duplicative, so in Rolling Meadows, I came in towards kind of it was most of the way along. There wasn't a whole lot of public engagement during my time finishing that process. And then, because it's an action-oriented plan, there hasn't been too much since. We kind of have a roadmap, and we're following it.
Nice.
In general, keying into, I think, part of how you framed the question, in previous communities, I mean, I would say it is honestly really hard to get the attention of folks that aren't particularly invested in environmental issues.
Yep.
I think I'd speak for both of us when I say we really wish people took more of an interest in it. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes there is a group of folks who have a holistic environmental interest, who are very deep into these topics, and there's kind of a constellation of folks who have one interest, not that that's a bad thing. In Lake Bluff, after a while, it was gas-powered lawn maintenance equipment. People that don't want to
interesting.
hear, leaf blowers.
Oh, okay. I know
actually-
I know a few folks who have that problem.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there are important environmental consequences.
Sure.
Like two-stroke motors are just awful per unit for emissions, right? But issues like that, or lighting or native planting, you do get a collection of folks who kind of come to it with one interest and may or may not broaden their interest.
Gotcha. Very interesting. And so then, like you guys mentioned, there are so many different areas in sustainability, roads and wetlands and all these type of things. So how do you prioritize what to focus on in this sea of initiatives and problems that you're handling? If you want to start.
Yeah, this is something that, academically, it could really bog you down if you let it.
Yeah.
In Rolling Meadows, we did it very simply. It's a 3x3 grid. Difficulty, low, medium, high, significance, low, medium, high. People can usually agree on how to put things into those buckets. And generally, it follows the linear line, right? Easy things aren't that important and hard things are, and where there's outliers in either direction, you can massage those.
Gotcha. So almost a kind of like a triage of what's going to be the most impactful and will have the least resistance to actually transition the city for.
Resistance isn't quite the word I would use. I mean, some things are politically difficult. Some things are just resource intensive or time intensive. We tried to structure it so that our plan is very goal oriented or action oriented, I should say. And so any one of these 45 some actions you should be able to go 18 months start to finish on one action and 36 months start to finish on the whole plan, which is really aggressive as these things go. We're on track, I'm happy to say here. We're coming up on like the halfway mark.
Wonderful.
And, we're about halfway and there's a bunch of stuff cooking in the oven.
Gotcha.
There's transparently, there's like 6 things I haven't figured out yet on the list, which feels pretty good. But, yeah.
Interesting. And then how about over in Schaumburg? Are you following a similar methodology, or do you guys have a different way to gauge what's the highest priority?
I would say this is where it helps that we have things kind of divvied up among the different departments. So Schaumburg has a green team with a representative from all of the divisions. And this really helps because if there's an initiative that we're interested in, we can kind of assess what are we already doing, what's been done in the past, and how can we kind of, push this a little further? How can we add to what is already happening to get the most impact? And then in addition to that, these surveys that we're doing, which help us tap into the needs of the community. So the one that we're doing now, and then we also have a general survey that we do every 3 years to determine priorities for the direction we want to move in.
Gotcha. Okay. So more of a public-driven, like the desire of what the focus is, as opposed to working from that effort and impact matrix, essentially.
Yeah,
So even if something is harder, if it's a very hot topic amongst the community, that might get more attention and resources to move that forward.
Right. So it is kind of a balance of
Sure.
what's practical, what's happening on the ground, what are the new, emerging technologies and developments that can start to be implemented into what's already happening at the city, with this sort of larger visioning that's happening from what's the community galvanizing around, and what where do they want to see more attention being paid.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's great. And then, so as you're going through these initiatives, you're implementing them and shaping the community, how do you gauge success? How do you say, okay, this has been completed and we are achieving, the outcome that we wanted to? What does that look like? And then when you are gauging success, especially for things like sustainability, are you looking at strictly within the community, or how your community intersects with more national outcomes, essentially? So to to summarize, what does success look like within your community? And then do you ever look at a broader picture for things like more like green initiatives at more national data and how your communities fit in with them?
Yeah, so we can compare our community to national data. I think in terms of like gauging success, it has a lot to do with, the goal setting that Glen was talking about. When we do these plans, we set the priorities, we set the goals, we have, the actions that we intend to take, and we can, very clearly track like when we've achieved these goals. So I would say like more local and internal in that regard, but certainly like we can always look to how we, fit and compare to other communities.
Okay. Glen, is there anything, so enrolling Medows, how are you measuring the success of the various initiatives that you're implementing?
Yeah, so we are lucky in that, and I think many plans aren't necessarily written like this, especially in sustainability world, but let me reframe it. I mean, at one extreme, you can measure just output, right? I sent 100 letters today. I'm doing great. And at another end, I can measure outcomes. How happy are people enrolling Medows today? And this is very easy to influence, and this is very difficult to influence. You find somewhere in the middle. Our plan is really intentional about the action steps are action steps, and there's a binary state. Either I did it or I didn't do it.
Okay, yeah.
I have a honey-do list, and I'm just crossing it off, unlike in my personal life. Not joking further. So, that has a benefit of really clear objective results, but also, and just natural downsides to it. It's harder to talk about outcomes at the end of the process. Especially when we're dealing with really big concepts like carbon footprint. That's really hard for us as a city to move the needle on.
Yeah.
It's really hard for us to measure. And so part of the coping mechanism, if you would, is trying to identify these actions, these strategies that we know are making positive difference, even if we're a couple steps removed from that ultimate outcome measurement.
Gotcha. No, thank you for outlining that. I do have a couple of community-specific questions here. I will get to those right now. Okay. So I don't know what this abbreviation is. Do you promote LEED certification for buildings, houses, or businesses? LED, LED, LEED certification for buildings, houses, or businesses.
Yeah, that's from you.
Very specific.
We don't require it, but we definitely promote it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say just LEED specifically. I mean, LEED is a great metric. There's a number of great metrics for measuring green building.
Oh, great. Okay.
But
yes, yeah. I got it now. Okay.
Leadership and energy efficiency
Something like
design.
that.
Anyway, but we incorporated into a lot of our design guidelines. So these are not requirements, but it's something that's encouraged. And then, we have certain specific districts where this might be more encouraged than in other districts.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Similar.
green building certification program. I'll mention here. I think it's part of like the USGBC or something, right? I think it's ultimately a federal program, which means like many federal programs.
It's in limbo.
Yeah. We'll see where that is in a few years, unfortunately. But I will say, LEED, very innovative. When it was originally introduced, and still I think offers a lot of great concepts, and there's a lot of great practice around it, because the documentation and the standards are so high. Honestly, I've worked on one LEED project in my career. They're kind of few and far between, and I observe, many of the people pursuing that certification right now are either in the large corporate or the government sectors.
Gotcha.
I think we agree that, having, pursuing more green building strategies and efficient buildings is important. There's some cool, local, shouldn't say local, state efforts in the state of Illinois to achieve that, but that doesn't necessarily mean LEED certification. That just means the floor for what are you allowed to build through the Energy Conservation Code is just moving up year by year.
So then in terms of like green building standards or requirements, as cities, do you typically set those, or is it more of, like you said, a guideline to say it is preferred, but not necessarily a requirement to build in Schaumburg or to build in Rolling Meadows?
In the state of Illinois, it's really easy. So in the United States, many of the building codes come from a group called the ICC, the International Code Council. It does like consensus-based building code work, so government folks can contribute to it, the industry can contribute to it. That produces a number of model codes. In Illinois, with very few exceptions, we are required to enforce a Illinois version of the International Energy Conservation Code. Okay. So we're always running within a few years of that. Also, some communities in Illinois can voluntarily choose to adopt what's called a stretch code,
Okay.
Which is again published by the state. I'm not as well versed in it. That, as you might guess, is a stretch to pursue more aggressive standards than made it into the basic code, and that's locally adopted here in the state.
Gotcha. No, thank you. That's very thorough. Thank you. This is great. Thank you for the questions. Sometimes you really have to like fight for them, so this is really lovely. We have one
more Schaumburg.
Well, so interesting. We have a comment from a listener. I was listening to WGN today. They praised young people for using reusable water bottles, but do you hear rumblings about how to eliminate the sale of disposable water bottles in restaurants or big box stores like Walmart or Costco? So anything on the community side, Schaumburg or Rolling Meadows, about promoting reusable water bottles or just eliminating the sale of disposable water bottles. I know where I work, all of the vending machines, they last year removed all of the plastic water bottles, and everything is now cans or those strange tall metal bottles that have twist tops. It's all aluminum. But any efforts on the city level in Schaumburg or Rolling Meadows regarding that? Or no, it's okay. It's very specific.
We don't have any current efforts on that.
Interesting. So if you want to make it.
I would say, yeah, like that would be a good suggestion to include, for the survey.
Yes. Rolling Meadows.
Nothing specific at Rolling Meadows. There's a bit of discussion about how can we try to discourage disposable bags. I would say that this is especially, after, for example, the Chicago example, even in that little world, it's just a very politically difficult topic. I think a lot of people want to avoid it. You are seeing some movement at the state level. I can't speak specifically to like water bottles, but styrofoam. There's a good styrofoam discussion.
Yeah.
And then we haven't gotten to it in plastics, but if you're being kind of economic about it, I think the term is total provider responsibility, right? But basically the idea that manufacturers need to bear some of the cost for the ultimate disposal of their products.
Yep.
In Illinois, we apply that to electronics. I think we're getting ready to apply that same principle to batteries. The theory is that if you start applying this to packaging, all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more interest in recyclable packaging, like aluminum, like paper, things that are more easier to reprocess and have better resale value.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
But the General Assembly, quite honestly, is leading on that front.
Gotcha. So we mentioned that because things are tied up in federal funding, that's a big question mark. One of the questions from the audience has been sustainability planning funding from the American Recovery Act. Is there still funding for green initiatives through this, or has this just been, are you considering it cut by the present administration at this point?
Go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
So a couple local answers and then a regional one. So much of the funding through EPA is up in the air. I think a court order right now says it exists. Who knows if it does? And then, funny enough, we do a lot of this work, especially climate adaptation work, really, is through FEMA, and that has been a more painful subject. I think we're going to be left footing about a $300,000, $400,000 bill that was supposed to be covered by the federal government.
Sure.
The project already encumbered, so the funding was pulled back.
Yeah.
For a couple little examples, there is a pot of money in FEMA that's supposed to pay for updating building codes, in part to encourage resilience to flood losses and to disasters. We were due for a state subrogated grant for that. That's gone. It was like a 5-figure number, but it was significant.
Sure.
There's also through the Illinois Climate Bank program to help communities implement Solar App Plus, which is like an expedited permitting system for rooftop solar. That funding is still there for now. We think it'll stay there because state, I think, already has that money.
Sure.
But just by some moving parts, there's versions that don't line up. I don't know if Solar App, which is I think it's an National Laboratories project, is going to get the money to keep it up to date. And so we're kind of having to say no to that too, and we think that's a consequence of this.
Gotcha.
Big picture, in the bio, I'm on this climate planning project for Greater Chicago. That was stopped in the EPA funding shuffle. Again, right now they think they have funding, but it's hard for them to commit because they don't know that the funding is really there. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
They're trying to find alternate funding. We aren't reliant as municipalities on grant funding for a lot of this sustainability day-to-day work.
Okay.
That tends to be a lot of local initiatives, but to the extent we are, it's been just massively disrupted.
Yeah, so mostly it sounds like things are being halted or postponed where there is that overlap then.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how is Schaumburg handling the uncertainty of initiatives where federal funding was expected and now is kind of more of an uncertain variable?
Well, within my area of implementing the Green Action Plan, we have currently and have in the past received funding from the Department of Energy for a lot of energy efficiency type projects. And I haven't had any communication from the Department of Energy, and I'm not expecting that to come through at this point. It's all kind of up in the air.
I see. So initiatives still moving forward, and kind of just you're not expecting to hear anything soon, so you're not counting on that, or what is?
Yeah. I think we're going to have to find other funding
sources.
Yeah.
Gotcha. On a lighter note, one question is, do you sell honey from the beehives in Schaumburg?
A lot of people do.
Okay, so is it then the citizens themselves, or
Yeah,
okay?
So the community apiary is for citizens to use. I don't take care of the bees myself. I don't know how to take care of bees, but we have a lot of people who are beekeepers and love it. And if they're not able to do it on their property, we have this option where they can come and use the community apiary and bring their beehives and set up their beehives there. And yeah, some of those people do sell their honey. We have honey vendors at the farmers market.
I was going to ask, that was my follow-up, is do they sell it at the market?
Yeah, totally.
Wonderful. Yes. And then additionally, any plans for compost pickup and drop-off? I think this is all a Schaumburg question, but if there's any compost planning in Rolling Meadows, do feel free to share as well.
Yeah, this is something that we've been talking about a lot in the environmental committee, actually. We don't currently have it, but there's a lot of interest in composting, developing a composting plan or initiative, and just kind of a lot of interest in food production and local food in general. So it's definitely something that we're working on incorporating into the next iteration of our plan.
The plan? No, that's lovely. I think at Rolling Meadows, I feel like the community garden has a compost pile next to it, and I don't know if we can contribute to it or what's going on there.
You can contribute. I can give you an answer. It's not Rolling Meadows specific. Funny enough, Lake Bluff, we did one of the first, maybe the first, certainly the first 3 or 4, what was called at the time food scrap ride-along programs. So food scrap goes into your landscape waste for composting, and it's a pickup drop-off service.
Nice.
That was really and food scrap in general is really great to keep out of landfills because it makes methane and it just takes up a lot of room, and there's great places to divert it. We don't have infinite landfill storage. that program up in Lake Bluff really only worked out well for us because we had a composting yard on the edge of town. So it was really easy to go to and from that facility.
Yeah.
There are a couple big ones around, but very quickly the costs of getting waste there and hauling it there outweigh, frankly, the environmental benefits, the economics. There are a few niche providers. Collective Resources in Evanston services a lot of suburbs on the north side. We're kind of on the edge of their area. We could do that. There's a subscription fee, and again, there's economics there.
Are there any scavenger services that do that? Because I know in Deerfield, they actually pick it up at people's houses like on garbage day.
Yeah, so if it's a third-party service, that is probably Collective Resource out of Evanston if it's in Deerfield. I'm not familiar with another one on the North Shore that does it. I would say the sector, and not my expertise, is starting to look at what are other ways to offer this, to move around it. So there's a few communities that are doing like collective compost bins. So you go to the school pickup line, there's a big bin, you can put your scrap in there if you care to carry it. But of course, compost scrap, food scrap is like messy, and there's animal problems, and there's just some practical issues here.
No, very understandable. Yeah, do you have a question?
I'm a Barrington resident, and we have Groot, and our village, the village of Barrington, we have our yard waste, separate garbage bin for yard waste and composting. And year-round.
That's great.
We cannot put meat in there, but only vegetables and things like that. And they pick up weekly. At the same time, they pick up our recycling bin and our regular garbage. And it really is very helpful because I have very little in my garbage, actually, when I'm putting everything else into that with the yard waste. And so having yard waste on the bottom, I always pick up something off the grass so that the food doesn't stick to the bottom. Sometimes I have to hose it out.
Just to repeat for our folks who are listening at home, it sounds like, so Barrington they do pick up, you said it was Groot? Where they pick up yard waste and compost weekly along with the trash. Sorry, just to make sure our folks at home can hear the comment from the audience.
Only the village of Barrington.
So the village of Barrington.
And there is, to the point, I'd have to look at the map, but there is a larger composting facility, I think more towards that direction, that makes it probably more economical for Groot to haul out there and service that. Groot was our hauler in Lake Bluff as well, but again, DK Organics, who in town, was kind of a third party arrangement.
I do have a very specific Schaumburg waste question here. Since Schaumburg tore down the village hall, what did the village do with the rubble? So after that construction has occurred, what was the outcome? And was there a sustainable?
So we do have requirements for disposing of construction waste. I don't know the specifics of it. I can find out though. If you want to, if the person who, I don't know who wrote that question, but if you want to reach out to me, I can find out for you, but I know that we have regulations around it.
There is a LEED standard for the disposal of construction debris. If you're doing a LEED certified project where they recycle metals and they do as much recycling and repurposing as they can as part of LEED. But I don't know about buildings that don't follow a LEED.
Gotcha.
So there is, I hate to keep butting in on these Schaumburg.
No. It's good to get another city's perspective on all things.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's state law. Many municipalities do it. Every municipality in Cook does it, but there's a required amount of construction, demolition, debris diversion. It's pretty high percentage. I want to say it's like 75%. So whether or not you're doing a LEED project, again, the intent is to keep most of that out of landfills and to divert it elsewhere. There's also some asbestos considerations.
I'm glad to hear that.
No asbestos in Schaumburg.
And then I want one more Monica question here, which is, what is the Oak Park Climate Ready program?
So they did a climate action plan, and they basically had a greenhouse gas emissions inventory done on all of the emissions produced in Oak Park, and also projections for future emissions based on existing conditions and population growth, et cetera. And then they identified different areas where they could reduce emissions. It's basically a plan for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a full sustainability plan, but it's targeted at,
Emissions and
abating,
climate change.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, thank you for the summary. And then, so how have sustainability targets changed in the past 5 years? What are the current trends that you're seeing today as you're putting these plans together?
So trends in Schaumburg, I would say one thing, there's a lot of advancement that's happening with renewable energy, electric vehicles, just the technology is rapidly developing, our ability to tap into the grid and produce energy using renewable sources is developing. And in Schaumburg, there's been a lot of interest in all kinds of features of that. So
Nice.
Putting solar panels on a house, we get tons of applications. We have a very streamlined process. Participating in a community solar program. If you can't put it on your house, you can still get some discounts on your energy bill by being part of basically a collective solar program. And then last year, Schaumburg actually approved 4 new micro solar production plants. So this is going to be energy produced in Schaumburg, which has not happened before. And this is also going to be community solar, so people can get some of that benefit of the energy that's being produced. It's a great way to diversify your energy, to become more independent in your energy production. So I think we're seeing a lot of progress in that respect. What else have I seen? Recently, with the price of eggs going up, I've seen a lot of interest in
Chickens. Yeah, backyard chickens, yes.
And just generally, small livestock, a lot of inquiries about that. Let's see.
I mean, that's quite unique. No, the solar, the communal solar, it sounds like the communal beekeeping, like having a space where people can share energy and use those resources, I think is a unique thing, and that's very interesting. Glenn, same question to you. Over the past 5 years, what trends are really kind of showing up now, and what is the sustainability movement moving towards?
Yeah, so again, Rolling Meadows, we adopted our first plan in there, so I can't give you the trend line.
Yeah, that's all good. Even as you experience it across the different communities you've served, yeah.
Yeah, so, I would say in Kansas City, it was a product of the time too, there was a lot more emphasis on the 3-legged stool construction of sustainability, right? So environment is 1/3, and then culture is 1/3, and economic development is 1/3. I think Chicagoland historically has, and many groups, but especially Chicago, very focused on, sustainability, environment are close to synonyms.
Yeah.
A lot of interest in those things, which is good. I think that's continued to grow exaggerated, but I think it's really 5 years ago compared to now, probably 7's a better line. It, really started to change more to climate. I think climate really mitigation is what's, reductions in carbon emissions is what's on everyone's mind. That's where a lot of the regional interest has moved towards, although there's still tiebacks to like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Those are a bigger part of sustainability talk now, more recently, but climate, I would say is really the focus now.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. From like you mentioned the three stools. That's my association when I think of sustainability. I do think of green initiatives. I don't necessarily think of community or those types of things, but it makes a lot of sense. Community gardens, community apiaries, community electrical power grids.
One of our, sustainability plan initiatives is, hey, we've got like everyone, including us, has a significant Hispanic population. We need to start translating this stuff into Spanish.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we've got a translator when someone comes into City Hall. We use a phone service or an iPad video.
Oh, interesting.
For that. There's other things under that umbrella too.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and so it leads me to my next question then. What are there any common misconceptions that the public has about sustainability work? What do you think would surprise us to learn? Because I am surprised to see all these things under that umbrella of sustainability. Is there anything else that you think that would surprise anybody in the audience about sustainability work that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, go for it.
I guess just the degree to which it's decentralized, right? I mean, this is federalism in action. There's not really a federal plan. There's not really a state plan. There's good regional kind of voluntary concepts that people align themselves with. The GRC2, some of the work done by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is a great example. But oftentimes, for better or for worse, we're all engaged in this practice of localism.
Yeah.
And some of this is just the way our country runs, and some of this also, for being honest, is, I see this a lot in other areas of local government too, but there's a lack of action at the federal level. I think Illinois is an outlier in that on many topics, there's at least some action on the state level.
Sure.
But the responsibilities are cascading down to the local level.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily the best suited to take on some of these really big problems. We're great at coming up with local solutions. But it's been left to us to deal with, and people expect us to deal with it, and we're trying to navigate it. But part of the consequence of that is, I'm reinventing my wheel, Schaumburg's reinventing their wheel. There's been a lot of variation in the approaches that are taken just in Chicagoland on this topic.
Which I do have a question from that, which because some of the things that you are working on, like transportation, or even just some of the environment, like prairie sustainability kind of work, some of those bodies intersect in different communities, right? All of our roads connect to other cities, and so our rivers connect between cities as well, and things like that. Is there any inter-municipality sustainability work, or is that something that is just covered at the state level? Or is there anything that you guys have to do at your level to coordinate or initiate that type of collaboration?
If you look in particular domains like watersheds,
Sure.
There's some required coordination there. The simplest short answer, I'll give you a short one, is just no.
Okay, yeah, all right.
There are a couple examples of cooperatives in Chicagoland, but we are all pretty much feeling this one out as we go.
Gotcha. So is it like as soon as something is up crosses a border, you guys know that you just can't touch that? Like I know for everyone's like, well, why doesn't Rolling Meadows fix the roads for something? And you guys have to say, well, that's an IDOT problem. We can't do anything about it. That's the state level. Is it the same thing for like flood abatement or prairie grass conservation as well?
For some things, for sure. Like
Yeah.
you were mentioning, like roads have different agencies covering different types of roads. Metropolitan Water Reclamation District does a lot of work with stormwater management. Like Army Corps of Engineers manages a lot of like restoration work on rivers. So there's different agencies that cover some of these more regional issues that, absolutely have to be considered regionally.
Sure.
Something like flooding and waterways absolutely has to be considered regionally. But yeah, from my role as a sustainability planner, I work with those larger agencies. I don't usually work with my neighbor.
Interesting, okay.
municipalities.
Gotcha. So does that necessarily mean like you put together a proposal, or you say, oh, we've collected data from this area, use this as you move forward with these roads, bodies of water, et cetera? Like when you work with them, is that like what does that look like from your end?
Like if a project is happening in my village that falls under the purview of one of these organizations, they would be managing that aspect of it, or they would be monitoring it, or implementing it.
Gotcha. Okay. No, thank you for elaborating. And then, so we are coming up on time. We've got about 5 minutes left. And one big question I want to ask on behalf of everybody who is here. So how can citizens support a sustainability initiatives? What channels are available for citizens to propose a sustainability initiative? We mentioned a lot of how it is really like these grassroots people who care. How do we become the people who care? Is it just join your local environmental group, or what is the main channel that you would recommend to the folks watching today? If you want to start, Monica.
I mean, you've heard me plug the
survey,
the survey and the Green Action Plan update. So, I mean, absolutely, this is a great time if you want to influence, our objectives moving forward, the future, like with a plan for the future. If you have an idea of how you want things to be 5 years from now, this is the time to give us that input, and we can incorporate that into what we're doing now. Other than that, we talk to members of the community, we talk to residents all the time. So, it's always, we're always available if anyone wants to reach out, and then we can take that to the green team or, whoever might be best suited to deal with that. And then the environmental committee is another way that people can participate if they're especially interested in having an impact. That's not, those are, people from the community who make up the environmental committee. Do you have to live in Schaumburg? Yeah.
So, well, hopefully, whichever city you are in has an environmental committee as well. And so in Rolling Meadows, what would be your recommendation, Glenn?
Yeah, in Rolling Meadows, we also have an environmental committee. I think we have one vacancy, and I don't think you have to be, I'd have to check the roster. I don't think you have to be a Rolling Meadows resident to take that particular one if you have an interest.
Very interesting.
Obviously, I think we'd like to have one, but
Yeah.
there's some criteria around different folks. So that is an easy one. I don't have a survey, but I do have a vacancy if you want to self-volunteer. I'd be more general, be more local government.
Yeah.
Decisions are made by people who show up.
Yep.
Quite frankly, most people that show up to say no to something.
Yes,
And, in general, unfortunately, and I'm sure this is a sympathetic audience to this, right, but civility is just getting harder and harder to come by. The number of times, and I'm not going to go on this big tangent, but the number of times I've been accused in not a very long career of being like crooked or on the take or something is just ridiculous. Like there's no one out, like big native planting is not out here trying to pay me off. Like we just need sane people in the room sometimes.
Yeah.
People being involved helps everything we do, including sustainability.
No, that's lovely. And then since we have your expertise in here in the room, I do really want to capitalize on this question as well. Is from your experience, what is the most critical change that we must make for our communities to be successful in the future? We talked about trends a little bit of kind of where things are moving. What do you think is like the main goal or a very important goal for your community to be sustainable in the years to come, especially with all of the other uncertainties that are happening?
So I could narrow it down to three. One, electrification. So we need to lay the groundwork for different kinds of energy, renewables, as those types of production come online and other types of production become obsolete. We want to kind of ease that transition and be prepared. And also getting rid of some of these higher polluting, fuels. Two, I would say preparing for more erratic, climate events. Okay. So increased rain events and flooding, increased droughts and heat waves. And generally the way to do this, it's so simple, it's just more plants. It's just like the most basic thing you can do. More plants, more trees, less paving. Plants are going to absorb the stormwater and filter it. They're going to cool the pavement through shading and evapotranspiration. So it's really going to help to moderate some of those, extreme situations that we're seeing more and more of. And then I would say reducing car dependency and just designing for people, designing for people first. We don't know what kind of transportation we're going to have in 100 years. Maybe it won't be cars, We do know what people are going to like. We definitely see a lot of benefits from this in terms of the economy, in terms of, culture and community, and just quality of life. So I think, prioritizing the human scale design and de-emphasizing cars in our environment is also going to be really important.
Thank you for summarizing that. Same question to you, Glenn.
I think I would swap electrification for governance, although that's important too, but that's basically my list. I mean, I'm gonna have to figure out how not to end on a bad note, but like it or not, some of our climate discussion has got to be about climate adaptation now, which is a really scary thing to say.
Yeah.
And, thinking about, we're in a better place in Chicago, we've got abundant fresh water, we've got a great climate, just temperately, things like heat waves and, flooding and stormwater management, those, I think, are problems that our region can manage if we turn our attention to it.
Yeah.
And I think we'll do that effectively. But thinking about that is going to be the next set of challenges for some of us, or for us working in space, I should say. The human scale discussion, I think, is great too. There's been a lot of talk about like 15-minute cities being like an evil plot to keep people from traveling or whatever. I think that's mostly in England, but a lot of what we can control at the local level is local land use, local transportation, the local arrangement of things, and if they require traveling or not. I think many people would like to live in a place where they could, if they wanted to, walk to a grocery store or walk to a coffee shop or walk to a park or walk to a third space. And that is very much within the control of, our cities to make those environments. Yeah. And that also just happens to have, in addition to being cool places to live, helps us to reduce the use of cars and the use of energy and just very practically make more livable places.
Thank you. Thank you both for summarizing that. No, that's wonderful. And we are at time, so I just want to say thank you again to Glen and Monica. Yes, please, a round of applause for all of their time today. And if you liked what you heard, go online, go to the Schaumburg and Rolling Meadows website, see if you can join the committee. Oh, we've lost light.
Save the energy. Hey.
Are we still live? Are we live? Okay. Civic series after dark, and if you want to learn more and get involved with things besides sustainability, our next Civic series awareness is on May 27th. It's Tuesday, and the focus is on artificial intelligence and its effect on politics. Take what you've learned, share with your